Ecotheology is theology that doesn't assume it's all about humanity. And theology is humanity's longest running attempt to answer the big questions like how did we get here? And what is the best way to live? What's the point of all of this? Ecotheology approaches all these same questions, but with the recognition that we are organisms that in an environment and that environment is integral to who we are and how we live as our own limbs and organs. Within Christianity, theology is the study of God and the attempt to answer those questions in light of the knowledge that we have constructed about the divine mystery. One of the theological tasks is to make theology relevant for each historical context. Another theological task is to assist people of biblical faith to understand the connection between idea and action, to live in such ways that reflect God's justice and unlimited love. Ecotheology is the attempt to assist people to live a life that reflects God's love and justice in light of earth knowledge, earth science, and contemporary social realities. The reason I care about ecotheology is because one cannot say that God is love and justice and yet live a life that ignores how their own lifestyles depend upon the oppression of others and the destruction of ecosystems. Ecotheology really brings new answers to old questions. It's about a much more complex understanding of the sacred. The Bible and the Christian tradition speaks about a God of love and justice. People of biblical faith believe in God's undeniable love for this earth, which includes every living being, human and non-human. As the ecological science teaches us more about how interconnected humans are with the earth, we must understand that closing our eyes to the effects of our habits and purchase in generating climate change is also closing our eyes to one of the primary biblical commandments. Jesus commanded his followers to love your neighbor as you love yourself. This is the heart of life for those of biblical faith. As we become aware of the causes and effects of climate change, the reasons why we must learn how to live sustainably is quite clear. First, let me say that sustainability is learning to live in respectful relationship with the environment. So the first step towards sustainability is asking what effect our normal everyday lives have on the environment, global and local economies, as well as communities. So for example, do we consider how purchasing this or that product is affecting the environment, economy, and community where it is manufactured? Consumerist economies rely on consumers believing that the cost of any product or service is on the price tag. But that is the fallacy that makes the idea of sustainability seem like a new, radical idea. But the truth is that humans evolved with their environment, and before the arrival of large civilizations, humans could only live sustainably because the human-earth divine relationship was the foundation for all existence. So really, we should be asking about the impacts on our environment, economy, and communities from abandoning sustainability as a default mode of being. And the answer to this is increasingly clear that it has been devastating. A practical example would be to start supporting local producers. However, in my view, it is essential to learn how they are, who they are, and why they chose to work the way they do. The old adage, reduce, reuse, recycle, it's good. And driving energy efficient cars are also a good choice. But if one person does those things without understanding why they are important, it is most likely that they have fallen into the trap of green consumerism, which is more of conscious appeasing maneuver than an example of sustainability. Another good way to get into sustainability is by learning about the real impacts of your activity. Consumer-oriented economies, like the United States, depend on the pollution of the earth and the exploitation of people whose governments can't or won't protect them. I would say watch a documentary such as Cowspiracy and learn about how multi-international corporations have a global impact, but deflect their responsibility by giving the appearance that's all about individual choices. Another great documentary is Kiss the Ground, which you will learn about concepts such as regeneration farming, drown down, start a vegetable garden in your backyard. And if you are not into that, then start by learning to do something with your hands that will contribute to disrupt the dominant consumerist mindset. The important thing is to reestablish a relationship with the earth. It does not have to be super spiritual or with any particular language, but having and maintaining this relationship is probably the most important thing an individual can do, because such a relationship naturally fosters sustainable living. First of all, know that you are not doing this alone. There are a great number of programs existing already, many of which are small, locally run initiatives focused on sustainability. Find out who they are, visit their websites, or do an in-person visit when it's possible, and learn how you can become involved. Some organizations need volunteers, and many have detailed ways that individuals can contribute to their mission. There are organizations such as my own institution, the Methodist Theological School in Ohio, which is focused on developing sustainable practices in communities of faith. We have a sustainable farm, Seminary Hill Farm, on our campus. And part of our educational mission is to equip people to think critically and act in ways that are theologically, environmentally, and socially responsible. You can become part of our CSA program or the CSA program anywhere, depending where you are. So you can organize a tour there, invite some of the professors to come talk, learn about and buying from local producers is an important step towards sustainability, and also fosters community around and commitment to sustainability. Other organizations, like in Delaware, where we live, in Ohio, the Citizens Climate Lobby meets once per month, and it's very active in lobbying for sustainable energy. They organize community events and are very welcoming. I think about in Baltimore, the Black Church Food Security Network founded by Pastor Heber Brown. And one can learn about how environmental sustainability can work to upend social injustice. The United Methodist Church has the Global Ministries Earth Keepers, which is a training program that equips US-based United Methodists to launch and grow environmental projects in their communities. There are a number of activities, but we are often under the impression that there is nothing around, but they are around. I would say that the biggest barrier to environmental sustainability is ignorance of the forces causing climate change and wealth inequality. Poverty strips people of the agency to make sustainable choices and makes them dependent upon unsustainable practices just to meet the needs of survival. We can talk about choosing to buy locally produced or fair trade goods from environmentally conscious producers, but this is meaningless to people fighting for survival. The mass-produced cheap goods depend on impoverished people groups to exploit. So many of us benefit from a globalized world, yet we fail to recognize the global interconnection this so obviously implies. Once we recognize that our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of all humans and the earth, that will remove a major barrier standing in the way of environmental sustainability. Simply put, the premise of a belief in a creator God is that God loves her creation. It's our own human-centered perspective that interprets this to mean that God's love privileges humans more than other creation. One of the primary biblical commandments was referenced by Jesus: love your neighbor as you love yourself. Care for the environment is not for the sake of our own devotion to the environment. It is an expression of loving ourselves and our neighbors as God commanded. I'm going to paraphrase the words of one of my favorite theologians and friend, Cynthia Molobida. Last night, I heard Dr. Molobida explaining the implications of how this commandment shapes the foundation of our economic lives. She said this is because neighbor love does not concern only to the interpersonal aspects of life. Neighborly love, as per the biblical calling, also pertains to the ways we structure our lives together, which includes our economic structures. This is because economic systems determine life and death. She reminded us that they determine who will have food and water and who will not. Clearly, followers of Jesus are commanded not to kill, disgrace, or damage other people and the environment, which our very survival depends upon. By not caring for the environment, by not engaging with environmental sustainability, we are betraying this call. Today, our lifestyle and the demands of our globalized economics, food system, treats people and the earth as object of consumption. It automatically betrays God's commandment to love our neighbor and it also betrays another primary commandment given by God, which is to preserve this garden, as it's written in Genesis 2:15. That is why environmental sustainability should be in the heart of those who choose to follow Jesus.